Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. What I'd like to do is spend a bit of time taking you through a little bit about Royal Mail and what it does and how we actually deliver in comparison to other final mile delivery organisations, but then take you a little bit further into what we are doing, what we have doing, and what we plan to do around decarbonising transportation and the delivery of mail. So just to give you an insight into the scale of exactly what Royal Mail is. So we deliver to 33 million addresses every day. We currently have 54,000 delivery routes, which we then use 42,000 vans to actually deliver those routes, which is then split down into shared vans, which is 2 people in 1 vehicle, and we operate what's called the park and loop process, which I'll cover on the next slide. We've then got singletons, which is 1 person in a vehicle. They go out and they will do anything from firms, bulk deliveries, and you've also then got your rurals, deep rurals, etc. So they do a lot more of the bigger mileage. And then we also have currently 5,000 singletons. They are high capacity trolley. This is the greenest form of delivery. This is where you see the people with the trolleys pushing them around, unpowered, and that's what you see on a daily basis. And then on top of that, in the last few years, we've now introduced the conventional parcel delivery, which is your park and loop your multi-drop, process. We've got 3,000 of those, and what that's doing is that's actually helped us to move forward in the way we can actually look at alternative vehicles moving forward. So, as I said, 90% of our parcels are delivered with letters to combine. This is around keeping the costs down and also reduce the emissions that we actually do deliver. Then on a daily basis, we call to 1 into 1.3 houses. That's what it is at the moment. 45% of parcels go through the letterbox, so it's much easier. The postie, you'll see them. With regards to the park and loop process, is what we do is we will actually load the van up at the start of the day, and they will take with them anything between 4 and 7 hours worth of work. Once that's in the back of the vehicle, they then will drive to their first park point. They will disengage the vehicle and they will get the pouch, and then they will leave the pouch. They will leave the vehicle for between 30 and 40 minutes at a time. That's what we in the top left-hand corner. Sorry, the top right as you're looking at it. That's what we call our park and loop method. We actually use the vehicle as a mobile storage unit, a secure one, which is completely different to like your DPD, Amazon, Everett, etc., who theirs is, that's multi-drop, that's deliver, drive. So they're in and out of the vehicle, 100-200 times a day. With regard to the park and loop process, you may only get into the vehicle a maximum of 10 times a day. So it is a completely, so when we actually look at the different equipment that we want to buy, use, or change moving forward, we have to ensure that, it ties in with regards to the sort of thing that we're doing. And then to enable us to do this, I've already touched on around dedicated parcels, that's what we call it internally, but this is where we've taken our larger parcels, we call them the format 3s and 4s, which is anything that won't fit in the pouch, which has to be delivered from the van. Because because previously that would be done as part of the park and loop, but then you were then reintroducing additional mileage because there was the off balance. You have the walker would be, say, 40 minutes, the driver 30 minutes, but then the driver would come back and then have to go around and deliver. Where we've now actually found, from both an efficiency and a emissions point of view, it's better to put those in 1 vehicle and actually do them covering, say, 10 duties instead of having 10 alternative vehicles doing that. So why are we looking at micromobility alternative vehicles in moving things forward? And this is the first thing is we want to reduce our CO2 emissions. Royal Mail is currently the lowest at 200 grams per CO, per parcel. That is the lowest in the industry. Hopefully later on this year, we will be actually announcing what our latest is, and I believe it is actually much lower than 200. So we are at the strive of that. But also, we are in the fortunate situation that we have so many, our delivery model is, feet on the street. We're also looking at we want to reduce the number of large vehicles on there, which is why I'm investigating alternative alternative vehicles. Will cargo cycles work? Will the smaller L6, L7 vehicles work? Can we look at powered trolleys? Do we need powered trolleys? Can we actually increase what we've already got, which is a 240 litre trolley, and actually have one that's just mobile, just pushing it? It's we've got to start thinking alternative and how we had to do this. We did a trial 4 or 5 years ago with Ford up in Manchester, and what we did there is we had one Mercedes Sprinter van actually replenishing 8 little mobile hand trolleys. Those hand trolleys would carry around about 1.5 hours worth of work. And the best way of describing it, it was a flatbed trolley. And on that, you had 2, I'm going to call them Amazon cubes. You've seen them, the yellow cubes, and they had those full of parcels. And we used them in Manchester in the highly densely populated areas. So what it meant is we could address the security aspect of it, but also we weren't moving much at all. So it meant, we took 6 vans off the road, which in itself, it was a really good trial. But that was more from a Ford perspective, that was more around their software and how it would work. For Royal Mail, it was all around how alternative technology stroke vehicles could actually be applied in conveying mail around the streets. We want to investigate further, can we decouple the shared van? The shared van is like I said on the previous slide. We've got 32,000 posties today out on the street in 16,000 vans. If you've got myself working with somebody, who's a lot younger, a lot fitter, is they can get back to the vehicle potentially a lot quicker than me. So they have to wait for me to return before they can move on. That's, from a business perspective and also from a person, the person doesn't really want to wait, but also from a productivity perspective, you don't want somebody waiting, 10 minutes, 6 or 7 times a day to actually do this. As the density, as call rates drop, which it is doing, because people are sending less and less letters on an annual basis, can we actually cycle or drive between delivery points, utilising vehicles that don't have doors, hop on, hop off approach, so these are the things that we are, that I'm actually investigating and have been investigating for the last 7 years. So, 2005, we used, Royal Mail, I wasn't there then, Royal Mail used to use bicycles to deliver, letters and parcels. A lot of people will actually remember where you used to get 2 deliveries a day, first class, second class. But the things, as we got the introduction of shopping online, things like that, people were ordering more and more parcels. So then all of a sudden, it wasn't 2 deliveries a day, it was 3. So we were covering the same footpath 3 times. Yes, on a bicycle, it was green, it was environmentally friendly. The posties loved it, they're on their own. So yeah, that was good. But because of the parcel volumes and what needs to be carried, is all of a sudden the cycle was no longer viable. So that's why between 2007 and 2010, we introduced what was called the shared van model. 2 people in a van, they loved, and it took a while to convert staff over from an unprotected vehicle to a protected vehicle. But then they got used to the creature comforts, but now they can carry a lot more. From a volumetric and quantity, they can carry a lot more. So they were never having to rely upon going back to get more mail. They were covering the ground once. Then, 2018 is when Royal Mail then really started to move back into and investigating alternative technology and vehicles. So so in 2018, we introduced some cargo cycles. They're an Italian model, and unfortunately, it gave cargo cycles and Royal Mail a bad name. They were unreliable. The technology wasn't ready for it, because we had to do a full revolution of the pedal before the motor kicked in. Where nowadays, an e-bike, you let you start and you've got the power instantaneously. The technology's moved on so much quicker in that period of time. And then since then, what we've looked at then is we've done the 4 mobility trials in 2021. In 2021, I actually introduced some we call them within Royal Mail micro-electric vehicles, but in reality, they're L6, L7 vehicle categories. We bought the Paxter and the Ligier Pulse 4. They're limited, they're classified as heavy quadricycles, limited to 28 miles per hour, but the Paxton doesn't come with doors. So it allowed us to test that opportunity. The Ligier was like a more conventional van, 2 cubic metre capacity. So we've learned from that. We've had them for 4 years. Then in 2022 onwards, we've then started to go back and look at cargo cycles. And what we have done is, in 22, we actually purchased the Pashley Alex tilting cargo cycle. It was really good. The posties in Kingston upon Thames, where they're still using it now, really loved it. And the work that we actually did with Pashley, we took their pre-production model and helped them to actually develop their production model. And then since then, I've tested, tried, evaluated loads of more, and I'm now in the final stages of actually the selection, ordering, and deployment of our next phase, which hopefully, it'll be hitting the press soon. So, how do we choose what type of vehicle we would want to do? Because the one thing I want to make it quite clear is it's not a one-size-fits-all. So anything up to 1 mile from the delivery office, you'll tend to see the high-capacity trolley being pushed by the postman. Cheap, cheerful, reliable, easily manufactured. Then once we go past 1 mile, up to maybe 3 miles, this is your stem distance from the delivery office, is then cargo cycles, either 3 or 4 wheeled models, are then, they work really well because they can utilize, cycle highways, greenways, going through parks. We've even had one of our cargo cycles in Oxford going while they closed down the Botley Road Bridge, going under a pedestrian way, going on the banks of the River Thames. So they are quite a versatile vehicle. The moment you start going past 3-4 miles, the efficiency benefits that you receive through cargo cycles then changes. The roads and the surfaces that you go on is different. So then all of a sudden you need something which is a bit more reliable, a little bit more robust. So that's why we went into the 28 mile hour L6, L7 categories. Then when you go past there, the roads completely change. You're then using probably 50 mile an hour or national speed limit roads. I would not want to put a cargo cycle or a vehicle limited to 28 miles per hour on one of those roads. So again, this is where you have to think about where you're going to do it. All the places that we put these in is we're always making sure that the large parcels are being delivered by, in larger vans. Just to give you some scale, we currently operate from 1,200 delivery units to deliver those 33 million addresses. So, this is just a quick slide this is what I've tested in the last 4 years. I've done 41 different cargo cycles. I've done 21 different microelectric vehicles. I'm now investigating powered high-capacity trolleys. We're also looking at what can we do with our current model. Can we make it bigger? We tested one where I made it from 400 litres from the current 240. But then once you start getting the ergonomics and the engineers involved, it's a case of, but we can't see the front, we can't lift it. So there's a lot that has to go into designing. The top right, and right to the top right-hand corner, this is where Mark introduced me to a company called IF. And what they wanted to do is they wanted a particular motorised vehicle that you can stand on, and it will go at 20-25 miles per hour. And it's much easier to do, potentially on the pavement. But with regard to that sort of technology, is can you actually ride them on the pavement? So we need to start understanding around legislation, what can and what can't be done with these, where can they be used? So what are the challenges around the vehicles and the technology that a large organisation, and I don't just necessarily now mean Royal Mail, in actually introducing alternative vehicles? As you can see, the one that I pulled out straight away is the price. Because the one thing around the price is the average price of an electricity cargo cycle at the moment in the UK is around about £13,500. If I wanted to put a van on the road, I can get a diesel van, it's not necessarily what I want to do, but I can get a diesel van for between 17 and 19,000. that takes 2 people. A cargo cycle takes 1. So I need to buy 2 for the price of 1. So from the economics aspect of it, straight away, price fails. And then once we start looking at all the other things around, we've then got the reliability. We've had issues in that. So how do you build the confidence? This is where, again, we need to, I keep on saying, we need to work with manufacturers, designers, and how can we actually make them reliable, maintenance, drive the costs down. Security, again, is another big thing for Royal Mail. And I have to draw that one out because at the end of the day, until that piece of mail is delivered through your letterbox, that is the King's mail. So it has to be treated accordingly. So it has to be secure. So if we're leaving that vehicle alone for anything between 10 and 30 minutes, when I come back, I've got to feel confident that that vehicle is secure. And I know other delivery organisations don't necessarily leave the vehicle for so long, but they still need, if they want to use alternative vehicles, in being able to carry people or goods around, they've still got to be able to rely upon the confidence that it's there. Our fleet size 42,000. Electrification. The one thing about this sort of technology, you can utilise a typical 3-pin plug, interchangeable batteries, or the traditional Type 2 standard charger. So, that's what I like about when you start looking at smaller alternative options, is your charging infrastructure changes. This will also help the smaller organisations to get involved in it. Then, so the finance, after sales. And then when we look at the operational changes, so once I've got through the first part, we then start, you then look at this part. So what are the operational changes? Users' vanity is a big one that comes up. People who are used to drive, new people to the organisations are used to now driving vans and have been for probably the last 18 years. So it's a case of how do you take somebody who's used to having the heater, the radio, all those lovely comforts. It's throwing it down. I'm just going to nip in the van. I'll have a quick cup of tea. I'll have a break while it goes. On cargo, cargo cycles and pushing trolleys, you don't have that privilege. But the one thing is I can say with regards to the people who try these and use them is they actually like working on their own. And yeah, as long as you give them the right protective clothing, they're not bothered. Because at the end of the day, a postman and delivery person is used to being out on the streets 6 to 7 hours a day. So give them the right clothing, then they will come and use it. Road criteria is another big aspect for those. So cargo cycles are limited at 15.5 miles per hour. So for us, is and what we've actually done as part of the work that I've done with other organisations is that we look at, let's not put them on roads with speeds any greater than 30 miles per hour. Because at the end of the day, we've got a duty of care to the users. And but also, as a user, what I wouldn't want to be doing, and I've experienced this, is on fast-moving roads, you don't want to be taking up the road, and then they can't get past you, because then all of a sudden, you're then increasing the risk. So these are the sort of aspects. Training, to train to run the van, simple, easy to do, because there are organisations that do there and accredited to do it. But training of alternative vehicles, like cargo cycles, there are limited companies out there. So it's around, can you get people to do that? Risk assessments, the capacity, vehicle checks. At the end of the day, when this vehicle leaves that yard, even if it's a cycle, it should be treated the same as a van. At the end of it's got to be fit for purpose when it goes out there. So once we've covered off all that, we then come to the deployment. The deployment's the easy part. Once the staff go out, they've been trained, they love it. But I think part of what I'd like to summarise of what I've just covered off is the vehicles, from a manufacturer's perspective, vehicles need to be productive and built, and they must be they must last, and they must be maintainable. Not something that's going to be here for a few years. You've got to be looking at a lot of large organisations, their vehicle replacement policy is typically 7 years. So if I buy a vehicle, introduce cargo cycles or powered trolleys or like the Paxtra at the top, if I introduce them this year I still want to see them on the road in 7 years' time. Because that's what I would do with a van. A van would still be in the, a van, unless it's written off, would still be there in 7 years' time. My local office back up in Stoke-on-Trent is we've just completely replaced the whole of their fleet. In that office, 58 vehicles. The average age was 13 years old. None of them had achieved 100,000 miles. So again, it's all around the right vehicle, right location, right. Then the next things I want to, it's the cost. They've got to be cheap enough so that the larger companies will use them. Because like me, I go back to, as I touched on previously, the cost of ownership is a big thing. I still can't, now 5 years on, I'm struggling. If I had just a fleet budget and not an operational budget as well, I'm struggling to get in 2 for 1 because the cost. But you can make it paying just about once you start bringing operational costs, no doors, things like that. Manufacturers, ideally, I would love larger mainstream manufacturers to get involved, because once they get involved, one, it helps to drive the price down, but also they can still make because they can then use their expertise through production lines. Also, you've got parts which transfer between different things. A lot of cargo cycle manufacturers now are using motorcycle or even motorcycle parts. So if that happens, straight away, they've got the economy of scale, so they can get the parts cheaper. Then the larger organisations can get the, in fact, majority of customers then can get the vehicles cheaper, but then also it helps with bigger businesses to actually acquire their business. So it then becomes, it's a cycle of life. Policymakers, you need to be there to define how these alternative vehicles can be used, where they will be used, but also it's all well and good saying that they can't be used on the pavement. But this then needs to be enforced, because again, there is resistance around alternative vehicles from large organisations to go too deeply into them because of the way a certain minority of users actually use your e-bikes. So, they don't want to be tarnished with the same. So, again, there are large organisations who talk to each other, and we are actually, we have got policies and we're putting codes of conduct in place around use, etc. Local government, how we're charging parking, subsidies to encourage that. Again, 2 weeks ago, the government announced the 5,000, the 2,000 subsidies with regards to vans. There's nothing there for alternative vehicles. Again, it's making it more difficult. So that's my part, but I think what we all need to do is moving forward. We all need to think and look at things in a different way and how we can actually move things and people around. Thank you for your time. Hope you've actually enjoyed my little bit. If you need any questions or anything, you want to contact me afterwards, there's my details. Thank you very much.